If you follow my channel, you know that I love Into the Radius. It's one of my favorite VR games of all time, and I'm pretty sure it will be remembered as one of the cult classics of the early VR days. So naturally, I was very excited about the sequel. In fact, this was my most anticipated VR game release for a while now, even though there are some pretty high profile games still coming this year. And now, it's finally here. It's finally time to return to the Peshorsk exclusion zone. Well, a part of it anyway. Let's rip the band-aid off immediately. This is an early access release. I played plenty early access games in my time, but rarely have I played one that was so unready. This is pretty rough. Not gonna lie. The game is in a very early state of development. Not only is most of the content not in yet, also a lot of the game's systems are still missing. CM Games were very transparent though. They published a blog post about what to expect from the early access and what not to expect. Let's read a few points on what not to expect. Any story, weapon durability and cleaning, weapon customization, hunger and satiation, armor and helmets, new enemy types, full implementation of the Tide, laboratory at base, usable artifacts, difficulty settings, and functional co-op. So there's a co-op mode in the game already, but it's very far from being finished. We'll not talk about the parts of the game that are still missing in this video. We'll not talk about the bugs and the jank, because all of these things will get added/fixed at some point. Instead, we'll talk about what actually is in this very early access release, and how it compares to the first game. What changed, what is better, and what is worse. The script for this video turned out a bit longer than I anticipated. I'll be putting timestamps in the video description, so if you only want the TLDR, you can jump right to the summary. Time is precious. Just in case you have not played or heard of Into the Radius, what is it all about? At its core, Into the Radius is a VR shooter that is heavily influenced by S.T.A.L.K.E.R or Roadside Picnic. The gameplay is a mixture of S.T.A.L.K.E.'s open zone exploration and a PvE extraction shooter. You have your home base. From here you'll undertake excursions into the exclusion zone that is filled with dangerous anomalies and entities, and try to extract as much loot as possible while also completing quests to increase your security level. With a higher security level, you'll be able to purchase better gear at the shop, which in turn allows you to delve deeper into the more dangerous parts of the zone, ever closer to the Peshorsk radius at its center. The sequel is pretty much the same thing. So what actually is in this early access? One of the planned 5 areas is fully implemented, while one full area and a little one that is somewhat of a tutorial area. It's a bit more than that because you'll actually do real missions here, but not much more than that. The home base is here with a mission terminal, a shop area and player accommodations where you store all your stuff and sleep away the night. A shooting range and the laboratory are still missing. With the mission terminal comes the basis of a progression system. There are top priority quests, which is your main quest line, and a bunch of side quests. You can progress up to security level 3, which will give you access to some classics like an AK or the SKS. I initially said that most of the content is not in the game yet, and that's definitely the case, but let's put that into perspective real quick. I played about 15 hours to clear this first area. I did not beeline it, I took my time to generally explore and test systems, and I had to repeat some stuff because of bugs and jank, but even without that there's easily 10 plus hours of gameplay in this first area alone. This is already more content than many other full VR games have. It's going to be a pretty massive game when finished. Now let's see how this one plays. We grab a few quests and head out into the zone. Immediately we are confronted with new anomalies. So far there seem to be only 3 different anomalies in the game. The good old reflector is back. It's pretty much the same as in the first game. If you get too close it will do light damage and push you back. Then there's a new guy which I called the junk anomaly. Junk as in trash. It will trigger when you get too close, which hurts. It has a bit of a cooldown, so you can trigger it with probes and safely get closer for a short while. I like that. It gives the probes a further purpose besides just making anomalies visible. There are also some moving junk anomalies that seem to travel on predetermined paths. Finally, there's the electrical anomaly, which was completely reworked. It's much more visible than it was in the first game, at least most of the time it kind of phases in and out. There are some that are stationary, but most of them are moving. These things are real terror and tend to show up when you really don't need them. You hear them well enough and they will always induce a bit of panic. I'm generally happy with the design of the new anomalies. They make the game a bit more dynamic. After I retired, the position of the stationary and the path of the moving anomalies change, so you'll never really feel safe from them. Anomalies are cool and all, but the real threat of the zones are the entities. So far there are only spawns and mimics in the game. Spawns had a pretty big redesign, not only visual but also in their behavior. In the first game you basically had to dodge their attack before you can take them out. Now they don't miss. they really don't miss anymore. But they are slower and they hesitate for a brief moment before they attack. That is your window to take them out. It took a bit of getting used to, but I actually think it's a good change. They seem a bit more unpredictable now, especially if several attack you at the same time. It can get a bit frantic. Taking a closer look, it seems they are made out of scissors now. They also make a scissor sound when they attack. That's awesome and terrifying at the same time. They come in different sizes. The only difference seems to be that the bigger ones are easier to hit. Mimics. Mimics are for the most part unchanged. There is a visual redesign, they no longer only silhouette, that's cool. They still come in different types with different weapons, pretty much the same thing as in the first game. There are, however, some seemingly subtle changes to the mimics that actually have a pretty big impact on the whole feel of the game. Into the Radius was a very scary game. It's one of the most terrifying video games I've ever played, in fact. This one, not so much. It's creepy alright, but not nearly as terrifying as the first game, and that's mainly because of the mimics. For one, they now glow in the dark, they are much easier to see, then they are a lot quieter, so you'll usually see them way before you hear them. In the first game it was the other way around. Most of the time you'd hear them, you'd know that they are near, but you'd have no idea where they are exactly. Then there are the voice samples they use, which were a lot worse in the first game, and I mean that in a good way. Here they're kind of, whatever. I'd assume that it's intended. Making the game less scary will make it more accessible. It'll be a positive change for some, a negative change for others. For me it's a bit negative. I like my Into the Radius terrifying, but it's not a huge deal. I'd also be down for a less scary version of the game. There's no armor in the game yet. There will be player armor, there's already a display for that on your watch. I don't know if there will be an enemy armor system as in the first game, which was a system I did not like, so I'd be fine if I just got rid of it. There's no armor piercing rounds so far either, only full metal jacket and tracer rounds, so we'll have to wait and see. This is just a small jump for me, but a big leap for the franchise. Yes, there is a jump button now, and with the jump button comes several jumping areas, not real puzzles, areas. Great change. Another nice addition are portals all over the map that lead to different areas in the same location. You have to go through to see where they lead, but they'll always lead to the same position, so after a while you figure out some decent shortcuts you can make use of. I like that. Speaking of traversal, there's some climbing, mainly ladders, but there's the occasional other thing you can climb, but only at some main mission locations. I like to see stuff like that all over the map, that'd be pretty cool. But let's try to focus on the important things there for a bit. Why do we do all this? Why do we navigate dangerous anomalies? Why do we fight deadly entities? Why do we jump precarious gaps? Well, loot. Loot, obviously. Sweet and precious loot. New is this stuff called Ash, which will directly give you some cash without having to carry it back to the base. The vendor trash you'd find had a bit of a redesign. It's no longer research equipment but mutated or melded together objects. I have a small collection here. Artifacts. Obviously, the most valuable treasures of the zone are artifacts. You still have the detector, which will begin beeping when an artifact is near and will show the direction, but you no longer need it to pick the artifact up. Now you can either just pick them up directly, some you'll have to shoot, others you'll have to melt with your flashlight before you can pick them up. The biggest change about artifacts is they are everywhere. It's a lot easier to get artifacts. In the first game there would only be an anomaly clusters, for the most part 1, sometimes 2. Now they are all over the place. On this truck here, for example, is a pretty common spawn. Anomaly clusters often have like 4 artifacts in them, so you'll find a lot of them. For now they are only mission items or vendor trash, so that's fine. There will be functional artifacts at a later stage. They have this laboratory plan to analyze artifacts, I think. Maybe you'll need lots of them, we'll have to wait and see. There are 2 pretty impactful changes to the whole loot game here that I both don't like. These are my main complaint, my main worries about this very early access. For one, there's no, and I mean absolutely no, interaction with the game world anymore. There are no doors to open, there are no drawers to search, there are no cupboards to rummage through. All loot is just lying out there in the open. Loot containers are back, but they are also just open. The world feels very static. Very flat game. It's a VR game, let me use my hands to open stuff, to manipulate the game world. That is so important for immersion. It seems like a deliberate change because really all world interaction is gone without fault. I really do hope they will reconsider this point. The second thing is the quality of the loot. Alongside the vendor trash, you'll find plenty of magazines and ammo boxes and sometimes the occasional weapon. But the weapons I found were trash. Like straight up trash, all of them. Well, there were one or two exceptions in areas you'd visit during a top priority quest that had a good weapon which was in a guaranteed fixed position, but all the random weapon spawns were just bad. I know that's a deliberate decision. In the first game you could find some pretty awesome weapons that were way above your pay grade, so to speak, and they wanted to get rid of that. They wanted progression to depend only on your security level, not on random loot drops, and I get that, but I think they overtuned it here, cause it changed the way I played the game in a pretty significant way. Exploration was a major part of the first game. When I'd see a structure, any point of interest, I'd go investigate, out of curiosity, but mainly because of the possibility of great loot. In this one, I caught myself avoiding structures, because it just did not seem worth the hassle. They'd always be dangerous, and I knew I wouldn't find anything good in them. Sure, they'd have more vendor trash to collect, but that's not exciting, right? It's just not. So while the first game was very much about exploration, this one is more about getting to mission objectives, and I think that's a very negative change. The first area is divided into a northern and a southern part, divided by this river which you can't cross except on two bridges here and there. These are heavily guarded, so if you want to get to the northern part, be prepared for a fight. I'm not quite sure what the point is. It limits the openness of the zone in a pretty substantial way. I didn't go north much except if I had to for a mission, because why would I? Having our mission objective completed and our loot collected, we head back to base. So far there are three main areas at base. There's the mission terminal where you accept missions and turn on objectives, because you know most missions are fetch quests. Everything looks a bit more modern. From the analog look of the first game we have progressed here into Windows 95 era. Mission structure is the same as in the first game. There are top priority missions which will progress the game and your security level, and there are side missions. Between each top priority missions you'll have to complete an increasing number of side missions. Same as in the first game. I did not like it back there and I do not like it here, but it is what it is. It's worded a bit confusing here. It says you need security points to accept the missions, and you'll get security points from completing side missions. So more complex side missions will give higher progress, reasonable, but I've seen a lot of people that thought you'd need security points to increase your security level. That's what I thought at first too, but no. You just need them to accept the pending top priority missions, and completing top priority missions will grant you a new security level. Well, some of them do. While the story content is not in the game yet, some of the top priority missions have some implied storytelling. The last one, for example, wants you to fetch a thing from a walled off area, a boarding house. The mission objective would send you to a secret entrance, but reaching it you'll find it blocked, so you'll have to find another way in. There's a portal that leads into the complex, but you don't know where it is, so you'll have to tune some detectors to pinpoint its location. The mission description is just go to that place, then go to that place, then go to that place, then go to that place. But if you connect the dots, it does tell a little story without actually telling the story. I'm interested to see how they plan to flesh that out. Across the courtyard is a shop area. You can sell your stuff like in the first game, just toss it in the bin. Behind the sell area is a new shop, which I love. No longer is it just a menu, now you actually can grab and test your gun right here, outfit it with attachments and go to checkout with a complete package. It's great. There's a lot of shelves closed for now with things that are not in the game yet. New is this section here. You can now upgrade your backpack and body rig. The backpack upgrade thing is cool, only problem is that you can only exchange your backpack here at base. That should also be possible out in the zone, because you will lose your backpack when you die. We'll talk about the dying part a bit more in a second. The body rig is a good idea, but not yet implemented in a very good way. See, these are mirrored here, so if you want your shoulder holster on the other side, you'll have to buy the version over there. The thing is, you can customize in the options where your backpack is. So you can have your backpack and your shoulder holster on the same side, which will make it random whatever you grab when reaching over the shoulder. So you have to purchase a new body rig when you change an option in the setting. That's not great. I'd much rather like it if you could freely customize the position of pouches and holsters on the rig, and make pouches limited time purchases that are locked behind security levels. That way you'll still have security level progression combined with a higher customizability. Also new is that you lose your body rig when you die. That's a bit of a problem, because if you die and you want to make a corpse run, you'll usually need some gear to get your stuff back. But when you lose your body rig, you can't bring anything with you. You can't even put a pistol in your pants or anything. So you'll end up buying a new cheap body rig, go out, get your stuff, and then you'll have to abandon the rig because you can't put it into your backpack or anything. As it will never despawn over time, the zone will be more and more littered with abandoned rigs yeah, the whole body rig system will need a few polish passes, but the idea is good. Speaking of dying, the difficulty in this release is pretty high. I did die a lot. I'm pretty sure that is going to change when there's body armor in the game, and maybe with a few more zones the harder hitting mimics will get pushed back a bit, we'll see. I played Into the Radius on Iron Man mode because I don't like to save scum. I don't know if an Iron Man mode is planned for this one, so far it's not in the game, but with difficulty as it is now and as much of a hassle it is to make a corpse run, yeah, I save scums the hell out of this one. Weapons are all very familiar, gunplay and weapon handling are identical to the first game, they are great, I did not expect anything else. There's a bit of a difference when using scopes. In the first game there was a hold your breath button that would stabilize your aim, that's gone. Instead every weapon now has a virtual stock that will stabilize it all the time. I don't really know how to feel about that, to be completely honest, but it's definitely something you'll notice. At last we get to our accommodations, which are a lot more clean and functional than in the first game, but they also lost a bit of the charm. On the functional side, it's great, I love it. You have this snap-on weapon rack, which works like a charm. You also have these beautiful snap-in racks for longer rifles, I absolutely love them. But they also kept the shelves for your own personal chaos, love that. If you feel the space might not be adequate, I have something to show you. Come with me. This way. There is a whole second room here, with plenty of space. We have this trash can now, which is functional, but no. I'm not going to accept this thing. Too much. Too much is too much. I want my oven back. Where's my oven? I want to burn stuff. I want to burn! You have your bed to pass time. Time works exactly like in the first game. It runs in real time at base but is accelerated when you are out in the zone. Every so often the tide will act as a major reset, redistributing loot, changing anomaly locations, respawning enemies. For now it is set to 3 days, which feels a bit short. I ended up sleeping for a whole day or two just to be able to go out right after the tide all the time. I basically never did that in the first game. But yeah, we know that a tide is not fully implemented yet. Only difference now is that you straight up die when you are outside while the tide hits. What they are actually planning to do with it, I'm not quite sure, we'll see. So that's pretty much it. That's an overview of all that is new or has changed compared to the previous game. This is a very early iteration of the game. A lot will still come and a lot of what is in the game now will be subject to change. With this version I have two main concerns, the first being that there's basically no world interaction, which makes the world feel more static and more flat gamey, and then the loot that is less exciting, which discourages exploration. The core gameplay is for the most part there, and it's the same as it was in the first game, it's good, but that's not what made Into the Radius so special. Into the Radius was always a good game because of its gameplay, but it was an incredible game because of its immersion, atmosphere, vibe, and all these things are not there yet, not nearly on the same level as in the first game. There's no early access discount, it's like $40, which I think is a reasonable price when the game is done. For what you get now, it's not, it's definitely not. On Steam it currently sits at about a 75% mostly positive rating, which I think is very generous. If you read the positive reviews, they are all like, nope, don't play it now, but I would still give it a thumbs up because, believe. People just have faith in the studio, and for a reason. The first game started into its early access in an even worse state than this is, but CM Games listened to all the feedback and they turned it into something very special. If they have done it once, they might be able to do it again, right? Hopefully. So my advice would be the same, to wait. This is not ready. Only get into it if you really want to support the development process. And I'm not talking about financial support. CM Games are not a small studio, they have that mobile game money, I'm pretty sure they can finance the game on their own. I'm talking about providing feedback. The developers have specifically said that they started the early access this early in development because they want the feedback. They are basically developing together with the community. That is their thing. That is how they do. If you see yourself joining the developers Discord, giving feedback, writing bug reports, then by all means go ahead. Be warned though, this thing is not only very unfinished, it is also still very buggy. I had crashes, deleted gear, spontaneous deaths, mission objectives that won't spawn, it's pretty bad. Performance is also horrendous. I'm not worried about any of that, it's to be expected. I just want you to know what you are getting into if you decide to check it out now. I'll let this one sit for a while, maybe I'll check back in from time to time to see how the progress is going. As of their Steam page, the plan is to release late next year, so it's gonna be a while, and yeah, they'll definitely need that time. While in early access it will only be available on Steam, when the PC version is ready they'll think about bringing it to other platforms. Don't expect that to happen before 2026 though. That's it. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. See you in the next one.